Hello, everybody. Welcome to That Word Chat. So great to see everybody. Thank you, Sarani. Heather, our producer, who you're used to hearing from. If you're watching on YouTube, you may rarely ever hear from Heather, but people in the room know Heather, our producer. She's on vacation. We gave her a vacation this week. So Sarani is filling in, and she's going to run the room, keep everybody in line. And then our friend Erin Brenner has agreed to come back and do her old live tweeting. So we really appreciate that. So if you're watching on Twitter, follow Word Chat and the hashtag That Word Chat. And today we have this is going to be fun. We have a great guest today, Kelly Wright, who has just completed her PhD. She's was from the University of Michigan, just finished this summer. Really interesting dissertation we want to talk to her about. But she's also done lots of other work in different areas, and she's having a lot of fun, I think, as she launches her linguistic career. And now she's at Virginia Tech, so we're going to ask her about that move. And Kelly, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's. I have tons of questions. If you have questions in the room, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. Kelly's a bit of a Renaissance person, so we have maybe some different topics we can touch on. But first one, I want to do this is a little bit of a challenge starting out. Kelly, you call yourself a linguistic activist, and so here's the thing about my understanding of linguistics, or my introduction to linguistics, is that linguistics are people who just sit back very quietly and observe the language and then report on that. And they're and like the scientists tend to do, they're very conscious of not inserting an opinion. So tell me what a linguistic activist is, and do you get funny looks from old professors who hear that?
So yeah, okay. This is a great question. I'm glad you're asking it. So for scholar activism in general, or at least linguistic activism, or as far as the way that my work works, is that my work is focused on policy issues. So I'm looking at how the perception of people based on identity categories contributes to institutional inequity. Mm-hmm. And from policy perspectives, from a legal perspective, proving that or demonstrating that focuses on a specific evidence base. So the kinds of experiments that I design are formulated in such a way that they will build out that evidence base, right? And so I've done work on the housing market, right? Looking at redlining, which is this large amorphous legal concept, and being able to show, here's how this works on an interactional level, in moment to moment speech processing, when individuals walk up to or call an apartment building, so we can demonstrate how it works. So being able to build an evidentiary base. So I still do the science in the very removed way, in the same clinical way, but it's building the experiment for the purpose of demonstrating a phenomenon that points to social inequity. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, am I mistaken in that? Is my assumption sort of off base, or do you get pushback on that aspect of it?
Well, let's just say my work hasn't been funded yet.
Okay. Well, okay. So I want to get back to this, but actually, let me just say, I think there's a parallel. A lot of the people in the room are copy editors, not all by any means, but uh, I've been a copy editor for decades, and my thinking was as a copy editor that I know language changes, but I'm not going to be the one to sort of be out there. I'm going to resist that change until it's established, and then I'll, go along with it. I'm come to realize that that thinking no longer, well, probably never really fit, but it doesn't really fit anymore and when copy editors get together, what we talk about is language change and the the rejection of the binary, the gender binary, the different ways we talk about minority populations and others who are sort of left out of the system. And anyway, I'm getting long-winded here, but the thing is, what I'm realizing is that by resisting change, we're simply saying the way things are done are fine, which is not necessarily, which is not inclusive. It's the people who control the language are the ones who set the rules, and we make other people who don't fit our mold. We keep them from that power and those rights, and so I realized that if I'm going to say, well, I don't like the singular they, it's confusing, so I'm just going to not use it because that's the way it's always been done, and that's fine. Or worse, there are still people who say, well, he is a generic for, that you can use. I realize we're making a choice to stick with something that maybe not. So to me, I think there's a certain amount of activism that is called for in copy editing. And I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to go on that long, but I think that's maybe a parallel in linguistic activism. So I think it's cool.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think this is really interesting. So a lot of my work deals with standardization, and just what that is, what the scope of that looks like. So to understand racialization, right, kind of puts you in this, okay, that's actually a subset of standardization in general, to understand how a word becomes racialized, how it takes up a character that is like this subset of socialness. You have to understand like what sort of it means to be proper or improper in a general sense. So Anne Curzan, who's been on the show many times, right? She has
once, but yeah.
Or just once. Oh, okay.
Just once, but it was an hour, so
she's incredible, right? Anyway,
yeah, she's wonderful.
She has this example she's used many times when talking about like singular they, of how we can pinpoint the exact moment when it enters like the grammar or like our, like English usage zeitgeist of like Lindley Murray's grammar book.
Oh, yeah.
And Lindley Murray is like saying like singular he is like a universal, right? And this book gets used everywhere, right? Like it is a bestseller. It is on every desk. It is in every schoolhouse for a cool century. Like that is the kind of stuff that I'm very interested in. That's historical sociolinguistics. That's like the history of standardization in the language. And it's why I am a lexicographer. It's what has like kept me in that part of the field, because now I get to say, I get to like as a person in my body, but then also bringing in people with other voices like into dictionaries, into this like lexical record of being like, there are other meanings for these words, or here is this representation that didn't used to be here of there's more than one way to say this, or the absent ways of thinking about usage is part of the work I really like doing, of being able to say, here's where we diverged, like here's where we made people absent, and then on the other end being like, and here's where we're bringing them back. Like here's where we're updating the record, to reflect again. I really like that we can show, that standardization is a process.
Right, right,
Yeah.
and yeah, and possibly a harmful process in some cases, right? So so we'll maybe we'll probably, I'm sure we'll get back to this topic because this is an interesting one. Tell me about the dissertation. Um, and I have to admit I haven't read it, but you sent it to me, and I skimmed it, looked over it over like most people do.
You said just tell you about the dissertation, like the whole thing.
You sorry?
You said just tell you about the dissertation, like the whole thing.
Well, okay, maybe the highlights. Yeah.
Okay. So it's essentially a two-part project. It's introducing a new method of sociolinguistic interview. And then the second half is a series of sociophonetic experiments testing perceptions of Black professional speech.
Mhm.
So that's the simplest way to explain it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a significant portion of the interview, the interview, yes, sociophonetic. You that was in the chat. You did hear that correctly.
Yeah.
That is perceiving social information in speech.
Mhm.
So phonetic is like the scientific study of speech
Right.
perception. Sociophonetic is getting social information out of speech. So that is, I can tell that you're a woman or an older person or a tall person, or somebody
Hmm.
from North Carolina,
Right.
or someone who sounds able-bodied or someone who sounds trustworthy, things like that, out of a speaker.
Mhm.
So I'm
Right.
asking questions about how so very complex results of the study. I would maybe
But-
have, well, again, I'm not supposed to be paying attention to the chat, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to ask you. So, what were your conclusions? What did you find?
So again, like there a lot of wings of the work. So the things that are the wordiest, perhaps, about this
We like
the study
wording.
are not maybe related to the experimental side. So I'm not sure where to point that answer. The part of the interview process involved interviewing 17 Black professionals from Detroit about their experiences with language use, especially about using multiple varieties in their daily life, doing the sociolinguistic labor of having to switch varieties to exist as Black professionals,
Right.
to have to use more standard language. And so, but I'm interviewing them about 10 specific words that come from Black varieties and demonstrating that these individuals have shared knowledge about how these words are used and distributed, even if they don't appear in their workplaces.
So can you share the words?
Sure. There's a number. I mean, there's 10 of them.
Yeah.
It's words like dead ass. What had happened was shouty. We talked about the N words. We talked about words like finna, bet, lit. That's not all of them.
Yeah. Did you say Saudi?
Shouty.
Oh.
Like,
so yeah, I don't know this one.
shorty. Is that better?
Short. Okay. Yeah.
Like you're shorty. You're home. You're like your girl. You're Saudi.
Yeah. So these are well, I mean, we've also had Danica Salazar on the show talking about
cool.
the new Oxford Dictionary of African American English, and excited. I mean, that really fits in with what your research is.
Yes, it does. I'm marginally involved in that project. I'm on the Oxford English Dictionary Researchers Advisory Guild. And so they just like have a cadre of folks that they run things by. And also that project has this one, I mean, the OED has, for all of their dialects, all of their varieties of English, has this mechanism through which anyone can contribute language data in any form. So you can submit handwritten data. You can go in and record yourself saying words and telling people what they mean. So from any variety of English, you could just go in and say a word like shouty and be like, here's what shouty means, shouty. Okay, so I think like it's really, really amazing that anyone can go on there. So that's just, I don't know, an incredible tool for collecting anything and for people to be able to represent themselves in the ways in which they use words and what they mean. Yeah, I think it was an incredible open source tool that they applied.
Let me ask you about the history a little bit. So Black English has always been a major contributor to the language in general, but it's also, like you say, there's a lot of there's grammar, there's words that aren't, they're sort of, maybe young people use them, and but they're not sort of part of the workplace. Is that, I often ask this question, and it's probably a difficult one to answer, but is it getting better? That are people more accepting of language differences nowadays, or is it still kind of a really difficult process to get people to understand that it's okay to have different background and different language?
This is a good question. I think that in general, not from if we're not talking about African American languages, we're just talking about linguistic differences in general. I think that people are somewhat, depending on where you are, more accepting of that somebody might know another language or prefer another language or slip into another language at some times. I think that it very much depends on how close that language is to other languages of the global north. So something from Europe, right? Something that was previously a language of wider communication. I also think that it is something that we would consider a language, right? So when you move away from that, like it's something that we would call a language with a capital L that is more accepted than dialects. So when you get into something that, oh, you sound like you have an accent, or you sound regional, or you sound this, or you're speaking English with an accent, that kind of thing is less accepted. When you get into regional dialects of American English, this is where we're at the bottom, right? So you can be speaking English with a foreign accent and still sound, this is racial-linguistic ideologies. Now we've arrived here. This is the idea that every construction you use is perfectly grammatically correct. You could be producing language that would read like perfectly copy edited writing. Your language would read like writing as it comes out of your mouth, but it sounds accented, or it sounds racialized, or something, or you have a facial deformity, so it doesn't sound able in some way, that, or right, or a deaf accent, people say, right. All of this, people don't do well in the workplace, even if they're producing perfectly standardized speech. That's racio-linguistic ideologies at work. Is it something about your body is making you be perceived as a non-standard speaker? So we haven't come very far in that area of people produce like perfect language, and it doesn't seem to matter. Like even if that person isn't in the room, it doesn't seem to matter. That's where we're like still having trouble. So some folks in my studies, especially young folks, are like, I don't really try to produce standard language anymore. Like, or I don't do it as much. Like I am not really code switching. Like I'm just being me. But they know that it limits them. but they kind of don't care. They're like, if
Right.
there's a place that doesn't want me because I sound like myself, then I don't want to be in that place.
Hmm, mhm.
So
Is that are some of them being sort of aspirational when they say that? Like, I mean, maybe not completely honest with how they're
maybe, I mean, they're
presenting
all,
themselves. Yeah.
they're young. I mean, I want them to have the world that they want.
Mhm, yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a question from the room. If you have a question for Kelly, please ask it in the chat, and we'll ask you to ask it in the room. So, Sarani, I think we have one, right?
Yes, we do. A question from Karen, and actually Karen is not available to turn on her mic, so I'll go ahead and ask the question. Her question is, how much does economic background play into it?
I'm not sure which part, but it is as effective as any other social factor. So in traditional sociolinguistics, we look at 5 major social factors, and socioeconomic status is one of them. Class is one of the classic factors in all social science. So it's one of the key things that most socio is based on. It's certainly an issue with access to standard language, using standard language, the perception of people who sound more or less standard when they're performing it. And also who was in control of producing that language, putting that language into print, and whose language was printed. I think that maybe covers all the topics we've gone over so far, depending on which one you were asking about.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, there's the fact that people of a certain class, they may have less, they may not go to college, they may have less of a they may be like some of your subjects who say, I don't need to change the way I talk for others, whereas some people who maybe are of a higher class, they're told, no, you have to speak this way to get ahead. And so, right. It strikes me, it's like I think of um, in England, in the UK, I hear it used to be you had the very standardized language, the Queen's English, and now you listen to the BBC World Service, and it's great. You get accents, you get news people who aren't trying to affect a certain accent, but they're all over the place, and sometimes it's I think, oh my God, what's that? Some of these accents are kind of thick and hard to get to, but it's a joy that there is that. So is that, I mean, do you study that side of it, or is that just that's a different country?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
so a lot of my work has centered in the US, just coincidentally, but one of my early studies was on independence in Ghana. So I looked at like a British, Commonwealth, and how English played into independence, the role of independence and language standardization there. And there are other global issues that I'm interested in. So I think that, yeah, the phenomena that are most interesting to me are certainly touch all of these areas. It is these, institutional inequities. It's like, okay, if we have education, if we have a modern banking system, if we have, et cetera, like these patterns play out in all of these different societies, just in a different way. It's like, give us the recipe is already there. We just have different ingredients, essentially. But one thing that I am really interested in here is, like you said, is looking at, gosh, it just jumped right out of my head. The ways in which these different like prestige dialects have shifted over time. Like you were talking about in the UK, like how people orient differently to the Queen's English over time. These different things about when we're performing, like what sounds posh, essentially here in the US. Yeah.
Right. Is that, are you, is there is there a commonality in what you see in Ghana, in the UK, in the US?
Yes and no. I mean, I was looking at really different things. So
Mhm.
that study was about nationalism and how a nation attempting to wrest itself from colonial rule
Mhm.
in the 50s, following lots of different models, or attempting to build like pan-Africanism,
Yeah.
right? Had to use English, had to do this in a language of wider communication, or they would not have been able to participate in global economics.
Right.
That is part of there's a paper that goes along with this. And that they have 14 national languages, and how did they do English as their language of wider communication and also represent multilingualism on a
Right.
national scale from day one, with a nation with essentially zero GDP.
Yeah.
It's a very economic paper.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's very interesting because it really asks, what does equity look like on an administrative scale, on a national level? And that is it speaks to really like where I come from, because my work as a linguist comes from this top-down level of like what happens at this institutional scale. That's like what I've always been interested in from a policy
Mhm.
level. Sorry, it's
Right.
very nerdy.
Right. No, I mean that's fast. I mean, a lot of linguists do the opposite. I assume the
Yeah, people
bottom
are like
up.
looking at morphemes, like, ooh,
Yeah.
not like
And-
I love that. This is where I want to
yeah.
spend my hours. I can get
But
lost there very much.
but policy. I mean, I don't know that we think about linguistic policy, but I mean, there are certainly policies when it comes to Hispanic language, when it comes to, I mean, I don't know if the law is still there in Arizona. A few years ago, they said you can't have an accent to be a teacher.
Yep.
So yeah, so are there
English
some?
only laws exist in a number of states still on the books. I mean,
Yeah.
and you think about like language revitalization. I mean, we look at Israel, we look at indigenous states, we look at, all these different places that are trying to reclaim their language. And that is done with policy. It's done with
Mm,
direct talk about talk. It's done with direct talk about how a language works and their history and who speaks it and where they speak and what resources they need. So that's, and yeah, this is,
yeah.
during the pandemic, we saw people coming out and, more signers, translators on the news
Mm,
next to these are linguistic equity and policy issues. That's the kind of stuff that I do.
right. Right. So let me back up and ask how did take us back a few years. What was your inspiration to go into this field? What prompted it?
Yeah, thanks. So the first linguist I work with is Michael Montgomery at the University of South Carolina. He worked on the Dictionary of Appalachian English. And so I was an English literature student working on absurdist drama.
Okay, good.
when I got an opportunity to do an internship with him and went and learned about lexicography. I started working on building out entries for the Dictionary of Appalachian English. And I worked with him in his home with primary documents for the first time. And that, just having conversations with him about what it was, like what it meant to put an example, in this like concordance form of pulling it from a primary document of something that somebody went into the field and heard an individual say. And these people were from the mountains that I grew up in, that my grandparents
Mm-hmm.
grew up in, and then putting it into this book. Underneath the word like hate.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to like write that entry myself and write it down from somebody that, you know, from like 1930, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that is how I became a linguist. That's how I became a linguist. That's
Must
how I
feel
fell in love with
really,
words, like the
yeah.
whole thing, the local, the whole thing, the large scale, the small scale. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I came back from that summer, it was over for me. I've been obsessed. I've never stopped thinking about it.
Yeah.
I never will.
Yeah. We have, I don't want to get too backed up with questions. We have a couple from the room. So let's see what's out there.
Yes, our first question is from Amy. So Amy, if you could please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I was asking about that don't people, I think you said, I don't know the exact context, you said something about young people and the way, a difference between the way they talk and the way old people talk, or people in between. So and I was thinking, don't people of any age speak more formally in some settings and less formally in others?
That's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, there's the context absolutely always plays a role. Always. There are certain situations where everyone is going to speak more formally or reach for their personal, like their most formal register as a person. So for example, if you're testifying in court, if you have to get up on the stand and, you know, raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, you're going to say your most formal language, so formal that you will probably make things more formal than they need to be, right? That everyone will go there, but not everyone's going to go to the same place, right? We're all going to go to our most formal, but not everyone's most formal is the same place. So,
yeah. Or they're less formal either.
Right. No, you're fine. So so what I was speaking about, I think, was I interviewed 17 people. So just in those 17 people, I had my youngest participant was 23 and my oldest was 85. And in that group, some of the younger folks said that they just weren't trying to be as standard, like they just weren't doing as much work. And a lot of these older folks talked about how, like, what Mark was saying, that like they've been told they had to do it like their whole lives. And so they just do, right? They've code switched forever and they don't really know another way to be. So
I was wondering if it,
sorry,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, we'll finish what you were saying and then
No, go ahead. That was it.
Okay. I've been wondering if you know, if this was the same thing as code switching.
Yes, code switching. Yeah, people call it a lot of different things. I call it style shifting because people use code switching to apply to lots of different things. And so for me, disciplinarily, that's what I'm referring to. But code switching, and a lot of my participants use that word too. So it is moving between different varieties or different languages, or just, you know, toning yourself down. That's people say toning it down, watering it down, holding it back, you know, not being myself, right? I mean, it's all kinds of different ways that this group refers to what they do and don't do. And then on the other side of being more comfortable, or, you know, being relaxed, that kind of thing, which is something we all do, right? It's not just about race. Like, it's just more pronounced when you look at this one group, because women certainly do this, right? Like when you think about gender, it's like when you're in a room full of a whole bunch of dudes and they're being weird and you're like, whatever, I'm just like not gonna talk. Or, you know, right. Or you're in like a dangerous situation and you're just like, don't perceive me. Like this is, or, you know, you've been the youngest person in a room before, or you've been the person where you feel like everyone in here has more expertise than me, or right? We've all had it. Or you're just at work and you're like, I can't say my thoughts. We have all filtered. We've all held stuff back. We've all not used the language that we would prefer to use or the language that's most comfortable. It's just for this particular group, they do it all the time because of the bodies they exist in. And they're not the only groups that do, right? There's lots of other people who talk about sociolinguistic labor.
Yeah, I don't think I've done that when you talked about being the only woman or close to that. I don't think I've done that, but maybe I do it unconsciously.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
just
I
a
had
handful of examples, right?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
that question actually. Is it how much of it is conscious and how much of it is something we do, simply we sort of conform to the people we're around.
And that's the thing, like the dissertation is about like meta linguistics, right? And so that level of conscious awareness is going to be different for everyone, and what you're most aware of producing, what you could talk about if we sat down to talk about talk, what you'd be aware of would be very different.
Right.
Right.
So we have we had Cynthia Williams on the show talking about some of these topics a few months ago, and I'm glad when I saw she signed up and she's in the room today. But she has a question.
Cool.
So Cynthia, are you available to unmute and ask?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey.
Hi.
I had a question about, so I hear a lot of people talk about linguistic bias and like the issues that you're talking about, but most of them are linguists. So I'm wondering if you see any space for copy editors to play a role in this area, because I've thought about it and the only thing I can come up with is, creating more understanding for what a copy editor looks like. Like a copy editor can look like a person who talks proper English or a person who talks like I talk around my family. But especially for people who are working on technical materials, I haven't come up with anything to like, how do we insert that into the standards for what nonfiction looks like?
This is a good question. This is something I really struggle with. It's a question I've been asked a lot of times since I started working on racialization in general. I have some early work that like machine learning work that detected all of these terms that were like in motion, that were like racializing, right? So you have the most, I think, powerful example is like a word like thug or like criminal or something that gets applied in certain ways to some populations and not others. And copy editors were really interested, like, oh, can we just like take this whole list and just never use these words? And I was like, no, because racialization isn't always negative. And I don't know, I can't tell you like exactly when. That is like not what the study was about. That wasn't the research question. It's not what I put in the model, right? And so it's sort of and also censorship is a really difficult question for me to work with. Like I also work on profanity, and I've been trying really hard for a long time to sort of understand how it operates and how like slurs work, and like really from a neural standpoint, and also like because everyone has a different list of what's bad. And our law works on like this intent versus impact basis. So to be able to say like, how do we write like more equitable language is very difficult. And so I think to answer your question, what I have come to, at least in my own work and writing, because that's maybe all I can speak to, is the way I write. And now that I'm writing for like more public audiences, I'm trying to take this into account, is being as inclusive as possible with the language I use and attempting where I can to insert the variation that I'm comfortable with, like as an author myself. So I think I don't always receive pushback from editors. Sometimes I do, but every once in a while I attempt to stand up for myself and being like, this is a word and like blah, blah. And I think like my positionality is like who I am allows me to do that. But I feel like I need to do that in some places and being like, Trina is a word. Sometimes. And I don't know that really answers, except for just being as inclusive as possible, like being able to talk about bodies, like female bodied people sometimes instead of women and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think just helps me feel like I'm doing better work. I don't know.
Mhm. But I would probably add to that, being aware of words that are that are commonly used in different communities, that may be offensive to some communities, words that are used in one community that if used in different context, it's offensive.
I've kind of been in a lot of, in the last year or two, I've just been in a lot of information gathering space of listening to people who are in other disciplines and observing, especially young folks, the ways in which they use language and how they talk about things that work and don't work for them and why. Because it's hard for me. There are a lot of words I'm trying to not use that I've used for a long time, like you guys and things like that, that are part of my, so it's very difficult. And I don't envy the challenge that you all have and folks in the media have, because I understand why standards are important and why consistency is important in reporting.
I think part of being an activist, a linguistic activist, is having an effect on that wider community now. So you're not just writing papers for other academics, which of course you have to do. You got to get a job, get tenure, I understand. But Gretchen McCullough talks about public linguistics and sort of, which I think is kind of, from my limited perspective, is a new concept and not something that was necessarily thought of before. But there's sort of a role for linguists to educate the wider public about what is what's acceptable, what shouldn't be looked at with disdain, perhaps. Yeah. So you're at Virginia Tech now. What's the job there? So
So this year I'm a postdoctoral research fellow, and next year I'll be starting tenure track. I'm really excited. We're developing an interdisciplinary language sciences program here. So I'm just building curriculum this year. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, this is excellent. So what are you teaching this?
Nope.
Semester?
I'm I'm doing lots of just recuperating, starting some new research programs, building a lab. I'm excited.
Cool. Well, I want to know what is it you said, building curriculum. Is there a class you're planning to teach? Because I think some of us want to take it.
We have this new program that's going to be starting. So we're building curriculum for that, for the interdisciplinary language sciences program. So it's sort of core classes, but with 5 departments on board. So it looks a little different.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
How many people are involved in that?
I have been here for a cool 2 weeks. So
you haven't met them all.
I will have to report back, but it's interesting and I'm really excited.
Yeah, it sounds okay. Well, definitely. We'll have you back. We'll talk. We'll find out how it's going.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's
going
to be fun. What I am really excited about is that students are going to have an opportunity to ask questions that we didn't get to think of, right? When we are pulling these walls down, starting early with, just barriers broken, I think is going to be really exciting for just the research questions alone. That's like what I'm excited about.
Sure.
Think in a way that I have never been able to think.
Right.
Go for it.
All these papers you talked about sound really interesting to me. I mean, obviously, I think linguistic profiling in the housing market is something that I think of a generation ago, which, redlining is mostly not, acceptable and has sort of gone out of style. But what you're talking about is when somebody calls the realtor on the phone and has a certain way of talking. Is there just some of that natural bias that says, oh, well, you want to live in this neighborhood, that sort of thing?
Yeah, and what's interesting is it goes in all directions. So you would think like, oh, it's the like stigmatized variety. But it's also the, the standard voice gets pushed out of the lower class neighborhood. The lower class voice gets pushed out of the, the higher class neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's a very sort of self-policing phenomenon, and it maintains these old red line districts. So that's sort of what we see is redlining is not a thing, but the areas remain because of these other secondary factors. So for a really long time it was banking, and now it's like these other covert things that become really difficult to prosecute, or to say like, somebody I called and this person totally knew I was young, or like totally knew I was Black, or heard Southern in my voice and thought I was an idiot. It's like, no judges, nobody's taking that case. So that's where the research steps in. And yeah, John, Baugh did a study about this 20 years ago, 20 years before mine, and showed the exact same thing. So it's a persistent phenomenon, even with phones being like less common, like people doing more things online. So I think
I suppose that I suppose that does sort of
John Baugh did the earlier study.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't, the chat, I'm trying to ignore it. I swear to God.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's an active chat. We have active chatters, but people on YouTube don't ever see the chat. So, it's hard to train yourself to sort of. But keep talking in the chat. We're happy to have you chat in amongst yourselves. And if you have any questions, we have a little bit more time to ask if you have another question now. So you strike me as somebody very energetic about words and linguistics in your field, and you're kind of all over the place. So I think we were talking before the show about the word of the year a little bit, and I did not realize it was you. I was at the word of the year because now we can do it on a Zoom thing. And I've said this before on the show, if you ever get a chance to go to the word of the year, if there is going to be an online component next year, it is so darn interesting to hear people talking about the words that were important for the year and what makes sense for to be that sort of, I don't want to say enshrined, but it's the ones we make note of that say this is important for the year. And I didn't really, and maybe it's because it was a little bit past. I didn't think of. Well, here's what I thought about insurrection, insurrection was the word of the year for the American Dialect Society word of the year for 2021, and I didn't think of it as a word of the year because of the judgment it sort of condoned, and I didn't know whether or put on what happened, and I didn't know whether it would be something that would sort of find its legs, but you gave an impassioned talk about insurrection, and my gosh, I mean, it is what we talk about now when we talk about January 6th. It certainly has, I don't think the American Dialect Society necessarily gave it a push. Maybe it did. I mean, it got a lot of press about that word.
I think too has certainly also bubbled up to the top in these last months. But I'm excited. I'm excited in this new edition that comes out very soon. The introduction will be talking about insurrection, the word of the year in this. I've got.
I'm sorry. What edition of what?
And the new edition that's coming out soon of Among the New Words. Well, the introduction.
Oh, Among the New Words, yes.
Well, it will be covering the word of the year, which I realize it's like the year's over, but also that's just like we'll be discussing it. So I guess the little bit of the preview of that is among the new words, when it was started, now something like 77 years ago, it was designed to supplement existing dictionaries with words that were not currently being covered from speech communities. It's some communities that weren't being represented, but also very new words, things that had risen to prominence that we wanted to discuss, or meanings that were in flux. And so that for me, I felt that insurrection really represented that, the prominence factor that among the new words attempts to capture. That when we think about usage and the way it reflects social meaning, and how when a word shifts its meaning, when a word we've had picks up new usage or picks up new groups of users for certain reasons, especially where that's been sitting on the shelf for a while, it does so in response to something that's happening, that this like spike in usage is like in response to something that exists in the world. And so for me, this prominence, like the reason why it was being spoken about at all, to me was like, this is more important than vax with 2 X's, which I think is exciting, but like, can we please stop talking about the pandemic? Like, I understand it's here, it's not going anywhere. We've got so many Corona coinages and they're all really exciting, and we got a whole section for them. We're gonna cover them all. That was me. Like, everyone else is gonna write about them. Everyone else is going to write about them. Let's write about something about prominence, which is what,
Right. Well, I think there's
publication for.
Yeah, I think.
But it didn't come out that way. I just cried.
No, I don't think you really. I don't think there was very little crying. It was a very good impassioned talk, and there were a lot of impassioned talks about the words. And vaxxed was the other finalist, vaxxed with 2 X's, which is sort of a new thing, and that's sort of probably a word that in spoken language, are you vaxxed? Are you going to get vaxxed?
It's very interesting. People say it, and like vaxxed, waxed, like all
all the variations on it.
It's certainly a fun one, and we did cover that too. That's coming out in the new edition. So
okay, when is this among the new words? When is this coming up?
November.
November. And where do we get it?
It's an American Speech.
Yeah.
So that next quarterly edition from Duke University Press.
Okay. All right.
It's open source, so it's available for free for 6 months. Among the new words, at least.
6 months. Okay. I didn't know that. Okay. Cool. So we're getting, we're in September. So, I think Oxford famously tends to come out with their word of the year way too early. But we're getting into the season anyway. So what do you think? Words of the year for 2022?
This is a good one. I they're all inappropriate. There's
you could be inappropriate on the show.
Yeah, there's the combining form "ussy" is definitely going to get nominated.
Oh, the combining form of the C word, which is very popular in England, UK, Australia. I don't know. Is it growing here?
I mean, it's maybe already dead. I don't. That might happen. That's probably going to get nominated. I don't know if it's going to get a word of the year. Maybe also USSY as a combining form. So BUSSY is like oh man, it's a boy's lady parts.
I'm completely
Are we all
lost.
Together?
No, I'm completely lost.
Okay, nobody. Awesome. Well, Google it.
I'm going to make you wait.
Yes.
Say it again.
Yep. fussy. Thank you. Ussy as a combining form is probably going to be nominated for sure. So that's one to watch. I'm trying to think of what
okay.
else. In I hope Pandamal happens. That one was my new word this year. That's like all the viruses happening.
All right. I'm sorry, say that one again.
I also, the J combining form, like jouch.
Jouch.
That's like a jean couch. Jouch, jorts, gina, denim,
Okay.
china.
Huh.
It's
This is
also dead
fascinating.
already. See, all these things are already
Yeah,
dead. So
right.
that means like they're
Mhm.
definitely going to get nominated. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see. Everyone should absolutely come. It will
Mhm.
probably be online, even if it's also in person.
Yeah, where is it going to be this year?
At Denver. If
Mhm.
it happens in person, it'll be at
Right.
in Denver. But it will certainly be online. And even if it's not, I'm the data czar, so I'll be the person who is counting all of the nominations and
So we
making
could
sure
just
that everything gets on.
we could just hit you up on Twitter, then send you a DM
Yeah,
and
you
say,
you can send them into American Dialect Society on Twitter.
Mhm.
For me.
There is an email address, right, where you can
There's an
actually
email
send in your
address.
nominations and
Yep, it'll go,
Yeah.
and I will check all of those venues and be putting them into a beautiful spreadsheet.
Mhm.
We get nominations from high school students. We get them all over the place, and it all goes
Mhm.
into a sheet. And then that is how we start the nomination process. So
Yeah. Excellent.
everything gets counted because it's my favorite thing.
Yeah, right. And we always do. I hope we do it again next year. After the first of the year, we do a show where we get everybody sort of, I shouldn't say everybody, but representative from various organizations that do a word of the year and have them come on and defend themselves and insult
Well,
the others.
we we like to be as inclusive as possible. So we'll have emoji and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the American Dialect Society. There are so many different words that all are worthy. It's not just the one that sort of rises to the top. So, so what else? I thought so. We're at 5:30. I haven't been checking I usually have my phone right here so to check the time, and I've gone over because I love talking about the word of the year.
Oh, it's so fun. I love it.
I love that. What else are you doing? I mean, you've got
Oh,
that
goodness.
on your resume. You've got you have must have a business card, quite lengthy of all your endeavors.
Well, I'm on the North American Research Network for Historical Sociolinguistics. It's a mouthful, but I do love it very much. It's work I really enjoy. We just support sociolinguistics in North America. But we have 4 annual events, and one of them is a research incubator, which helps people who have kind of research that's in the raw. So it would be like the opposite of what you would submit to the Linguistic Society. And it's a lot of fun. We always do like a tools workshop there and help people learn how to process data, which is a lot of fun. And we usually have like an archivist come and things like that. And yeah, what else am I doing?
You're going to do the word of the year. You told us you're doing the OED, the advisory thing with OED.
Yep, I do the advisory thing with OED, which I really do enjoy. That's just like, it's kind of passive, but it's a lot of fun because every once in a while they're like, should we go after this like source of data? And it's like, yes, absolutely. Or it's like, no,
wait, is that all you
trash.
say? Oh,
Don't
okay.
do that.
Oh, okay.
So it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And there's, it's really cool. It's really good work. Everyone over there is just wonderful.
Yeah.
So.
And you're building a curriculum at Virginia Tech, and that's exciting. And so we appreciate you coming to talk to us. It's been great. It's been wonderful. We'll have a show. Well, Heather will come back from vacation apparently. At some point, we'll do another show, I think October 4th. And this is very cool. We have Haley Gold, who wrote a graphic novel in two parts. You flip it over, you get two different perspectives, and in the middle are crossword puzzles as you go along. So this is like, I don't know, I where she came up with that, I don't know, but we're going to have her next month and talk to her about it. Thank you again to Aaron Brenner for doing our live tweeting, and Sarani for doing the producer's job. I was a publisher, couldn't get the word out. And this is always a trick for me to find, there we go, the right window to share at the end of the show. Usually Heather does this part. So thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. It's been great. Thank you, Dr. Wright. It's I'm sure you still like hearing Dr. Wright. Very cool. And I'm sorry, we'll fix this in the editing, but I tried to share screen and it said sharing pause. Let me try one more time. And to get this share, because you want to hear the theme song again, right? There it is. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.